Today we are going to read some stories about Chanukah from the holy tzaddikim and from the holy rebbes and different things that they used to do on Chanukah, and stuff like that. So let's begin. The first story is about the Admor of Ropshitz, the Heilige Ropshitz Rebbe. He came in to light the menorah, and his family saw that his feet were bloody and injured and had cuts, and there was blood coming out of it. And they were like, "What's going on?" And he said to them, "Today I did something called Gilgul Sheleg," which in the early days of the Chassidic masters of the Chassidic world, they would do something called Sigufim, which is basically kind of like, I don't want to call it self-harm, because that sounds bad, but they would basically, for this one, with the snow thing, with the Sheleg, it's basically rolling around in the snow, like without any clothes on, to basically cleanse yourself of any sins. And these things are brought down in the Kabbalah and different things, but these things, these sigufim were only done by very, very holy people in the days of the Baal Shem Tov, and after that it kind of stopped. Rabbi Nachman especially, he said not to do it at all. He said that you could accomplish much more with just 1 hour of doing his spoilus, of just talking to Hashem, than to do any of these types of sigufim. So anyway, this Rebbe, the Ropshitzer, he did it on right before he lit Menorah, and his family was like, "You're a very holy tzaddik. You're also a very, very old man. Like, you really need to do this today?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Why?" And he said, "I'll tell you a story." So he says, so this is the story. Basically, many, many years ago, he said that he wanted to travel to the Berditchever to watch him light the menorah on the first night of Chanukah. It's a very, very holy thing to watch a tzaddik light the menorah. And he lived very, very far away, and it was also very, very cold. And he walked for 2 weeks in the freezing cold Ukrainian winter. He walked for 2 weeks. He slept on benches and shuls. He barely ate. He went on wagons, and he went on all these different things. And he froze, and he did this, and he finally made it all the way to the city of Berditchev to watch Rabbi Levi Yitzchak light. And he got there the first night, a few minutes before Rabbi Levi Yitzchak was going to light, and he saw that there was many, many, many Chassidim already there, and he wasn't going to be able to make it to the front, and he wasn't going to be able to see. And he was like, "I just walked for 2 weeks, and I suffered, and I traveled, and I slept on benches, and I was cold, and I can't feel my body, and I'm not going to watch." And he's like, "I'm not going to get to the front." So he decided to crawl under the Chassidim, through their feet, on the floor, covered in dirt and mud and snow from everybody who walked in and everything like that. And he finally was able to get to the front, and he was able to see Rabbi Levi Yitzchak light the menorah and pour the oil and prepare the wicks and do everything like that. And this is a very, very holy thing. And he said that he can't even explain how holy it was. And he said to his family, he said, "Today, before I lit the menorah, today I was getting ready for Chanukah, and this scene that I saw by him came to my head, and it mamish shook me to the core, and I wasn't able to calm down. So I had to go outside and basically stick my feet in the snow without any shoes on and bring myself back down to this earth." So that's basically where these guys were holding and what type of levels they were holding on. So that's one story. So remember, we don't do that today, these types of things, but we try to do Hispaidus. Another story about the Rav HaKadosh of Tzanz. So I think it's talking about the Divrei Chaim of Tzanz, and it said that he would need money for tzedakah. So what did he do? He used to borrow money from people, and as a mashkun, as a deposit, he would give them his silver menorah. That would be by this person the whole entire year until the Rebbe paid him back. And before Chanukah, he would pay him back, and he would get his menorah back and be able to light it for Chanukah. One year it happened that it was already the days of Chanukah, and he didn't have any money to pay this guy back. And he couldn't borrow money from anybody else to get his thing back because he already borrowed from everybody. So he asked from his grandchildren or something that they should lend him some money, that his grandchildren should borrow money from other people, so that he could get his menorah back. And they said, "No, we can't do that because we're not going to be able to pay them back either." And he said, you know what, Seder, don't worry, I'm already gonna have a different menorah. It's fine. And they're like, what? Okay. So now it got to so it says a few days before Chanukah, they did get the money together, and they were able to be paid in the Menorah. They were able to get it back for him, but he did not want to use that anymore. And he says, I already have a different one. And they're like, what are you talking about? He didn't have one. But he said, okay, the Rebbe says, right? He says, finally, the night of Chanukah came, and the Rebbe of Tzanz was being oisik in his preparations to do the actual, to get ready to light. And it was, what's it called? And it took a long time. And, obviously it took a few hours for him to do all of his preparations. And then, right away, it says that, and then it was already so late that the train came into the city. And who came off the train? This very, very rich woman who was very, very famous, apparently. Her name was Temerel from Warsaw. Temerel Mivarsha. And she asked the Rebbe of Tzanz, and she asked, did the Rebbe of Tzanz already light? And they said no. And she went there and she pulled out of her bag a brand new menorah for the Rebbe. And that's what the Rebbe knew, that he was already going to have a menorah. So all these big tzaddikim, they knew things that we did not know. He knew that there was that this lady was going to bring him one, so he didn't want to use his old one. Rabbi Shlomo of Karlin used to say that it's better to light with candles of wax for Chanukah. I guess also back then they probably, it was very hard for them to get actual olive oil to light, so they would probably use more wax candles. But he said that it's very good to light with these wax candles, because when you light it next to a wall, the wax candles, it kind of makes like a mark on the wall, like the wall becomes like a little darker, and you could see this mark on the wall the whole entire year. So it could kind of remind you of the lighting on Chanukah. He says shemen, oil, does not do this, so that's why it's better to light with the wax candles. He says one time he lit with shemen, and there became a little bit of a fire, and the wall went on fire a tiny bit, and he was very happy that there was actually now a mark on the wall from his oil, from the Chanukah candle, from the Chanukah licht. They weren't whatever. That now it's also going to be the whole entire year that he's going to be able to see it. So that's also a little interesting little thing. Let's try to do one more. Try to keep these videos under 10 minutes. It says that the preparations of the wicks. Today we just buy wicks, whatever, and we put it inside the thing, we pour the oil, whatever, l'chaim. I'm saying there are some people that still do the actual hachanas of rolling the wicks, and people buy wool and whatever, and they roll it and they make sure each one's good, and they do that. And he says that by different rebbes, especially by the rebbe of Rabbi Shalom of Kaminka, this was a great avodah. When he was preparing the wicks, it was done with great hislavus and excitement. And it was he had this special avodah that other tzaddikim, they obviously all of them rolled their wicks, or whatever they did, or they used candles, whatever. But he says that by Rav Shalom of Kaminka, this was his special thing that he did. Everybody knew that this was like the holiest thing that he did. Let's see over here. And it says over here, interesting. Talks about different svarim. It says over here that the Rebbe, the Arugas Haboisim of Chust, would, before Neres Chanukah, would close himself in a room and learn the Sefer Zera Kodesh from the Rav Kodesh of Rupshut, who we talked about before, who did the thing with the snow. It's very interesting. You should check out that Sefer before Chanukah. Anyway, those are the stories today. Maybe we'll do another video like this, just quick, interesting stories about the Rebbes.